What's up, guys? It's your favorite bedroom genius here. Gonna give you another doorknob opinion here on NASCAR Talk. Today, there's a few things I want to talk about. The first thing, obviously, is the fact that, hey, a broken clock is right twice a day. And guess what? Martin Truex Jr. managed to win the NASCAR championship despite the fact that the chase is a thing that exists. So, great for Martin Truex Jr. I couldn't be happier for him. He was the dominant guy in car and team all year long. And hey, guess what? It finally paid off in a championship. So I can't say how proud I am of that whole team. Obviously, it's kind of a started from the bottom, now we're here kind of deal. It's nice to see a team that's not in the Charlotte, North Carolina area take a championship. And hey, you know what? I think NASCAR finally has an undisputed champion. One of the first times that's happened since the chase format started. Truex would have won in any format. So, hey, good for Martin Truex. I can't state how happy I am for him because he deserved it all year long. He was the best driver, best car, best team. Speaking of which, got a little something that's fired me up about NASCAR. And of course, it was in the title of this video, so you know it's coming. But something that's really starting to grind my gears about a certain one Brad Keselowski is the fact that since about the midsummer, he has really hammered down on Toyota in NASCAR, stating that NASCAR has allowed Toyota some advantages out on the racetrack that have led to them having this perceived dominance in NASCAR. And it's more than a perception, it's the truth. Because it may surprise you, but Toyota went out and built a better race car than Ford or Chevrolet. There's a reason Chevrolet is bringing in a Camaro for next season. It's not just because of a marketing ploy. It's because they took the opportunity to develop a different race car because they know Toyota has an advantage. Now, some folks seem to have a major problem with the fact that Toyota has an advantage. All the cars need to be the same, they say. Everybody needs to have the same equipment. Everybody needs to have the same advantage. And to those people, I say, you're wrong, Sam. Okay. So, to explain this easily to those of you who may watch other sports, racing, not just NASCAR, but racing in general, is the only sport where the thing that is used as the prop, in this case the car, is an integral part of the way the game is played. I guess the sport is played. You look at football, you look at basketball, you look at baseball, and generally across the spectrum of those sports, the playing equipment is exactly the same. The same baseballs, the same bats. A team can't come up with a better bat in baseball to say, let's say the Yankees can't develop a better bat than the Dodgers have. It's all the same equipment. It's standardized by the league, the Major League Baseball or the National Football League or whatever. Now, for whatever reason, there's a common misconception here in racing, and particularly in NASCAR, but it's not limited to it, believe me. I could go on a rant about IndyCar racing and their propensity for micromanagement and spec racing, but I won't in this video. NASCAR, the perception, at least in the fan base, and apparently in some of the drivers' eyes, is that NASCAR needs to do what Major League Baseball or the National Football League does with the footballs, but what NASCAR should be doing with the cars, in which case NASCAR should standardize the cars to the point that everybody is running with the same thing. And to this it's just like, this is one of the things, I'm actually surprised Brian France hasn't implemented something like this. Wait, he has. It's called the COT, and it was one of the things that many people talked about as the decline of NASCAR, at least from the major mainstream popularity that it had coming into the 2000s to where it is today. The COT is actually blamed, I notice, more than the chase, the lucky dog, or any kind of the gimmicks that were introduced into the racing. It's funny that the standardization of the cars, something that theoretically, a lot of people want, apparently, judging by the social media backlash, or I guess support of Brad Keselowski's recent statements, was the very thing that is being blamed for the current decline, at least the beginning of it. And here's the thing about racing, and it will always be a thing in racing when it's not like Indy Lights or something like Formula 3 or IMSA, lights, or, a Porsche spec series, is that when you have manufacturers involved in racing, and obviously NASCAR has 3 of those at the moment, Toyota, Ford, and Chevrolet, you're always going to have those manufacturers wanting to compete against each other. They're not in it just to slap stickers on race cars. They're in it to prove that their brand is better for the consumer, whether it be reliability, whether it be speed, whether it be the drivers that they are able to employ and be spokespersons for their brands. Now, the important thing about all of this is the fact that NASCAR is actually a pretty open series when it comes to development. Now, granted, there's a lot of micromanagement in the adjustments the individual crew chiefs can make to the cars at the racetrack, and to me, that's a bit annoying, the fact that they can't choose downforce levels or gear ratios for themselves. It's silly to me. But regardless, the chassis development, body development, engines, they're all different in NASCAR. Theoretically, if I hit the lottery right now, I could go develop my own NASCAR engine, I could go develop my own NASCAR chassis, and get a body from Ford, Chevrolet, or Toyota, and I would be able to go on the grid with my own unique race car. Now, obviously, the thing that's the big controversy at the moment is the bodies. Now, the bodies are not mandated, but inspected by NASCAR. They're approved by NASCAR. You always hear NASCAR approved. And I believe this is where Brad Keselowski's holdup is that he claims that Toyota's body makes more downforce than the Ford or Chevrolet body. And while that may be the case, it was approved by NASCAR, and NASCAR has their own wind tunnel data that certainly has, Ford, Chevrolet, and Toyota within a range that's acceptable for NASCAR to consider it a fair competition. Now, as the bodies are the most NASCAR regulated and mandated part of the car, again, the chassis and engines for the most part are built by private teams, not even associated with NASCAR or the manufacturers. Now, the only exception to this rule, interestingly enough, is Toyota, which supplies the engines for both Joe Gibbs Racing and Furniture Row Racing. Everything else is pretty much private. Now, obviously, there's like Hendrick Motorsports, which will provide engines for like Chip Ganassi Racing, and then Roush Yates provides the engines for all of the Ford teams, but it's not a specific Ford thing. Toyota Racing Development develops the Toyota engines for NASCAR. But again, the bodies are very much NASCAR mandated. And this is the thing that I think is causing some issues, and I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing if Toyota has been able to develop a body that's better than Chevrolet or Ford. This is the thing, that it's weird to me that Brad is going after Toyota so hard, especially considering that Chevrolet is also coming into the wind tunnel and obviously has developed a new car. So to me, it seems like if Brad is to blame somebody, and perhaps he can't for financial reasons, for the fact that his team is the leading Ford team at the moment, but it seems as though Ford needs to develop a new race car, new body, for their Monster Energy Series cars, because of the fact if they do have an aerodynamic disadvantage to Toyota and presumably Chevy next year when they introduce their new Camaro bodies to the sport, this is the cost of development. This is the cost of competition. And racing's always going to cost money. You can talk about cost control and whatnot till the cows come home, but ultimately, if you're going to go into a racing series and compete, you're going to have to bring your A game, and you're going to have to realize that a car that you developed 3 or 4 years ago isn't going to be competitive when you're in a competitive environment such as the one currently in NASCAR. Again, the bodies, engines, chassis, all open for development. People can bring in new stuff whenever they want to, and if somebody brings in something that's better than the rest of everybody else, you're going to see somebody pull away. I hate hearing on social media as well the complaint against dominant cars. Again, maybe it makes the racing boring, but somebody is excelling. That's part of racing. It's part of the fabric of the sport, where people complaining when Bill Elliott made 2 laps up at Talladega in the 1980s because he had such a dominant car. He fell behind, made 2 laps up, and won the race. I don't know. Those are the kind of performances that, to me, define the sport, define the legends. Someday, people will talk about Martin Truex Jr. and his Toyota, I would certainly imagine, as the dominant car. Here's another thing, interestingly enough, that was brought up on social media to me. Did you forget how much the sport tends to ebb and flow? Remember when Chevy was the most dominant car for several years? Remember when Ford was the dominant super speedway package in the hands of Roush Yates? Then it was DEI with Chevrolet along with Hendrick Motorsports. You know, you have these ebb and flows. Toyota, 10 years ago when they entered the sport, was an absolute laughingstock. People forget this. I don't think there was many complaints about Toyota at that point, except for, of course, the folks who were, xenophobic for whatever reason against Japanese manufacturers, but that's a whole nother issue. Nobody was complaining about Toyota then because, well, they were at the back. It was just Michael Waltrip and Dale Jarrett trying to get those cars into the field every weekend. So, I mean, you just look at this situation, and I just think it's silly. I think it's a bunch of hot air, and here's the deal. If you want to blame somebody for the fact that Brad Keselowski didn't win the championship and you think Toyota's got advantage, blame Ford. Because Ford decided to stick with what they knew, keeping their 20, what it was, I don't remember the last time they introduced their new body, 2015 I feel like it was. They've kept their 2015 bodies around. They knew Toyota was developing something new. They didn't try to push the regulations. It's probably too late now, but if I was Ford, I'd be developing a new body for the next season. And you can't blame NASCAR. You can't blame NASCAR for enforcing their rules and finding that Toyota did everything within their own rules to gain an advantage. That's on the other manufacturers to not catch up. And this is the other thing. It's like, where are all the Chevy teams complaining? If I remember correctly, there were 2 Toyotas and 2 Fords in the final 4 of NASCAR's chase. So where were the Chevys? And where were all the Chevy people complaining? Feels like Ford isn't really that far off the game either, Mr. Brad. It's just one of those deals where you just kind of sitting there and you're going, yeah, I'm going to try to get an advantage. So, it's politics, fair enough, but I find it annoying. And I especially find it annoying when people believe it. Believe that he's not just trying to gain an advantage by politicking rather than developing something on the racetrack. So that's my rant on Brad Keselowski and his anger towards Toyota. Misplaced, by the way, but I think he knows that. And just one last thing as we sign off here on NASCAR Talk. Dale Earnhardt Jr. Hung up his helmet at the end of the Homestead race. He didn't crash. He didn't fall out of the race. He brought it home, so that means people are going to be getting a race win diecast. Am I right? Yeah, but caps off a career, and obviously, again, his impact on the sport very, very large, just from the perspective of upping the game in terms of marketing, promotion, the amount of money invested by some companies, really true star power that American racing really hadn't seen. Now, it's been seen in like the European side of things with Michael Schumacher, Lewis Hamilton, Ayrton Senna, but really not over here. Dale Earnhardt Jr. is really the first, modern racing driver. Now you could talk about AJ and Mario and all them, but the first modern racing driver that's really transcended into the public conscience as a driver who you associated with racing, and he would have been the first race car driver a lot of people would have been able to name. Ironically, of course, the second one is Danica Patrick, and boy oh boy did you read the comment section on my Danica Patrick video. But congrats on a great career, Dale. He went out on his own terms, and Yeah, I'm actually kind of excited to hear him in the NBC booth as well. So be sure to let me know down in the comments what you guys thought of NASCAR Talk. Probably the next NASCAR Talk will be a review of the Daytona 500, and that's a while from now. So, man, if there's another big topic that comes up, I'll do another NASCAR Talk. But again, this is an infrequent show, as there are quite a few other YouTubers who do this kind of thing about NASCAR. So anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. This has been David Land on YouTube, and we'll see you in the next video.